I will be quoting from John's Gospel from the New Revised Standard Version, the NRSV translation, but I encourage you to use any other translation that you may wish. In each conference, I will also make some suggestions for your own prayer and reflection at the end of each conference, and the written guide also contains those written out, as well as some extra suggestions for biblical art and liturgical music you could also use to enhance your prayer experience. What is prayer? Let's just consider for a moment before we begin our retreat that basic question. What is prayer? Let me suggest that it is basically communication with God. But how do we communicate with God? We must remember that communication involves conversation or dialogue. In other words, both speaking and listening. So, while there is no right or wrong way of communicating, there might be some better or clearer ways of listening to God, or some noisier times when we cannot listen or cannot speak so well with God. There are many different forms of prayer, of course, vocal or mental prayer, prayer that is more rational, or other prayer forms that are more imaginative. Let us remember that when we are both speaking and listening to God, there are several ways of doing that. Speaking to God can be done in several different ways that are sometimes summarized through the acronym ACTS, A-C-T-S, adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, supplication. And I like to add one more, intercession. So that just like when we are speaking with other people, we can't just be telling them what we want them to do for us. We need to, in addition to the petition or supplication type prayer, also to give praise and adoration to God. We need to say we are sorry, to offer contrition or penance for what we've done wrong. We need to express our gratitude and thanksgiving for what we have received, as well as, of course, being free to ask for help or petition or supplication. And we should do all of this not just for ourselves, but also for others in need. We pray in solidarity with others as we intercede for them as well as for ourselves. Prayer is not just speaking to God, though, it is also listening to God. In the Second Vatican Council, the dogmatic constitution on divine revelation, called Dei Verbum in Latin, tells us that there are several different ways that we can listen to God. We listen to God through all of creation. Everything we find in the natural world can be a revelation of God to us. We can also listen to God through the products of human creativity, art and literature and so forth. We listen to God most especially through the sacred scriptures, the Holy Bible. But we can also listen to God through the prayer of the heart, the interior silence, the presence of God within us. In this biblical retreat, I encourage you to use these various forms of both speaking and listening to God. We will focus especially on the Gospel according to John, as well as some other texts from the Old Testament. But for your personal reflection times, I will suggest several different modes or methods of biblical prayer. You can find the first three of these listed in the appendix with some instructions on three modes of prayer that I will call reflective meditation, imaginative contemplation, and centering prayer. Reflective meditation basically means that we use our minds rationally to think about the words and the meanings of the biblical texts that we are reading, to focus on the message that God is trying to convey to us through the sacred text. Imaginative contemplation will be a method of imagining yourself as an active participant in the story, being right there with Jesus and the other characters, interacting with them, dialoguing with them, and reflecting on what God might be saying to you through such an imaginative style of prayer. Centering prayer will be a bit more quiet. It's a method of prayer that allows you to be open to God's presence, or to seek to find the connection with God, the communion or mystical union with God, in the simplicity of just focusing on a single word or a short phrase as a way of finding the presence of God deep within you. In addition to these three main modes of prayer, you could also do some journaling during this retreat, where you can